everybody. Welcome back to another Filmmaker Friday. We are joined by our new friend, Ricky Glore. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making the time. We were just talking about the woes of early mornings for fathers, so I'm glad you did this for us. Would you like to introduce yourself, the movie you're here to talk about, and where people can find your stuff online?
I am Ricky Glore. I am writer, filmmaker, performer, stand-up, criticizer of better artists, but then will immediately backpedal and then support them. Creative human being, and I'm here to talk about my latest low-budget movie, Sweetmeats, the horror musical, dark comedy that was, just like this little Northern Kentucky movie that 2 weeks before filming got picked up and executive produced and distributed by Troma.
Yeah, so I wanted to start there, man. I think a lot of us, when we grew up, right, have that kind of high school or middle school moment. I think I found it earlier because my dad was a derelict who would just go to the bars and leave us with whatever VHSs we wanted. And so I found The Toxic Avenger, right? It was like this game-changing movie to me where you could kind of see the rough edges, but you felt that comedic energy, right? It felt like a kind of Monty Python SNL horror movie, which I absolutely loved. And so I wanted to talk about that, right? When you watch your film, I feel like that kind of spirit of Troma is so alive, but, you know, kind of like the Supreme Court said, I don't know pornography, how to define it, but I know it when I see it. That's how I feel about Troma. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think sets the tone and makes a quintessential Troma movie?
Oh my gosh. I think for me, that's two separate questions about like how Sweetmeats falls into that world or what makes the quintessential Troma film. I think it's exactly what you were saying. It's that thing of when you, as a kid, when you're presented with media, it is presented to you because most of the time you yourself are getting bored and you need something to take up your attention, or a parent or a caregiver is just like, I need like 20 fucking minutes. Like, and they put something on. Most of the time they want to put something on they think is going to be engaging forever, what age you are. And I think because of that, we grew up watching a lot of really well-produced things. And some of it's pretty saccharine. Some of it's a little bit more biting, but some of it is just kind of mind mush. And Troma is mind mush. But I think when you see something like a Troma, like you mentioned Monty Python, it's that thing of discovery. Like one of the first earliest things for me, besides film, because I was shown, the worst shit at way too early of an age. But for me, I think was Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yes.
I think it was when they were on their Comedy Central run. And then the movie came out. I caught a little bit of Joel and then like went back and watched reruns and stuff. But I think maybe Mike Nelson had already taken over by the time it's kind of like SNL for me. I grew up watching the original in reruns, but the biggest like block of reruns that they would show would be like the Phil Hartman years.
Yeah.
And the Mike Myers, Adam Sandler. So like the Phil Hartman years and Dana Carvey, favorite cast of all time. But so I think that discovery of like when you found, if you had the experience of going to a video store and finding Troma was just like, oh, you can do this? Like, not all this is good. Like, not all this is polished. Like,
That's a great way to pin on, because it felt like I was watching something that I was like, how did this exist? Because like I was growing up watching like the Ninja Turtles, Batman, like these big fucking movies, right? And then horror movies. Like I saw Hellraiser when I was like 5. So
but
my dad's
still,
like, it's a guy with a toy, okay.
But it's like Clive Barker is this kooky like visionary, and like you can see that in certain filmmakers like a Wes Craven, Sam Raimi, John Carpenter. You can see their fantasy and their imagination in what they're doing.
Yes.
And Troma kind of had that, but it was like more of that derelict. It's just like, oh, they didn't give it to necessarily the kooky artist like a Lynchian or whatever. Some of this is just crude and just like the kind of shit that like you push the line with your friends and you're just like, if lighting a fart on fire could be a movie, I think that's Troma.
See, that's one of my friends once, he described his band. He's like, I'm in a new band. And he's like, we're kind of like AC/DC, but more manly. And I was like, what is it? Just like an hour of explosion sounds? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So that, I do think that's right, though, because it was the first time I had seen a movie that felt unfinished, right? But in a great, and I think there's a madness in that where you see the fucking seams pulling apart.
Yeah.
That was really exciting to me. I always equate it to when I was younger. I saw Jurassic Park in the theater, and I was like, I want to make movies, whatever the fuck that means. That's what I want to do forever. But then you get older, and you're like, how the fuck do you make Jurassic Park? And then someone gave me Mallrats, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's like me and my friends. We can make a movie, right? And I think Troma has that effect on a lot of us.
It's a reason,
this real, like, pioneering spirit.
There's a reason why people like amateur porn.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
It looks like people you see or closer to your day to day. It's like whenever a kid is
talking, that lady at the gas station. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, like it's better by comparison too. So it's like I've always wondered, like, teachers that we thought were attractive when we were younger, is it because of the prison we were in and like the situation and the location and that just like, but if you put her next to like a more attractive person, like, do they look like a foot? Like, I don't know.
I mean, probably, yeah. They probably just no necks, all the things we forget. The dress is covering a lot, but they had authority. And I think that was the thing. I saw Hellraiser at 5. I had a real authority complex. So it all makes sense when you're laying it out like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I think that was the same for Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith, for me, with Kevin Smith, my brother, who, gosh, it was his first year of college. And so my dad showed me everything way too young of an age I shouldn't have seen. But my brother introduced me to more independent theater and came home from college, and he wasn't out of the closet yet. And he had 2 VHS tapes. He had Chasing Amy and he had Dogma. And Dogma, I think, had just come out the year before. I think it was the year 2000. In the year 2000.
Throwback Conan O'Brien riffs, dude. We're doing classic TV.
And he's like, Dogma, he's like, I think you'll really like this. And then Chasing Amy, he's like, I think you may like this when you get a little older or have more experience. And then actually loved both of them. And then had the weirder thing was when my friend and I, we went and rented Clerks because the local video store knew my parents and they knew the kind of shit they were letting me watch. They were like, yeah, rent it. And we watched it. And we were like, oh, this sucks compared to his other stuff, compared to Mallrats and Dogma and blah, blah, blah. We're like, it looks bad. And, oh, we don't get this humor we don't get. The next year, we both got jobs working fast food. And then we rewatched Clerks and we were like, yeah, this is
our anthem. This is our Attica. I want to talk about this, though, because I love this idea of, like, people, like all of us, right? We grow up, we find the movies that kind of form us. We fall in love with it, right? And it's a pretty arduous journey, filmmaking, as you learn. So I wanted to talk about, how did this project, Sweet Meats, come together? And then that bridge, because you were saying that this was going to happen, and then Troma came in later. So how did that process occur, and how did Lloyd Kaufman and gang get involved?
I'll try to say as much of the most condensed version of this answer, because I know I can get long-winded.
Get your pipe, get your robe.
I love black box musical theater, and I love the juxtaposition between horror and musicals. And there's just something operatic about horror anyway. So I think if you can, some people have asked, like, do you think you'd ever just make a straight up horror movie? And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, I get something could be a little bit more frivolous and comedic, especially if you add music. But I don't know that I could just be like, all right, I'm going to make something that's going to scare the pants off you. Yeah. There's going to be something ridiculous and exaggerated about it, because I think just the idea of horror anyway kind of is. But we were going from All Your Friends Are Dead that we made, like I said, for $5,959, and we submitted it to festivals. We ended up spending $3,000 submitting it to festivals. I don't think people realize festivals are not free. A great website for them with some free ones is filmfreeway.com. But the best way to get your thing that you don't know how to get people to see. One thing is, And after we had our experience not getting into festivals, like we submitted them to just film festivals, horror festivals, and sometimes you can get criticism back when you don't get in. And the horror festivals were saying, well, your movie's more of a comedy than it is a horror movie. And I was just like, all right. And I didn't get too butthurt because, or me and Nick Hines, my filmmaking partner, didn't get too butthurt because they don't know us at any festivals. We hadn't done any hobnobbing or socializing with any of the people. So I understand the political nature of anything. So that didn't help it. And we were just like, man, we just want to get this movie shown. Here's some advice. Independent movie theaters, or even I think big name movie theaters now, post-pandemic, are willing to rent out their theater for almost little to no cost. And I will tell you, one of the coolest things is seeing that dumb thing you made on the big screen.
I dream about that day all the time, right? And you're like, they have to be able to bump like Mrs. Marigold's Taxi Cab for one 4 p.m. screening, right? Like they're going to sacrifice, what, $12? Like, come on.
Oh, I mean, and it's Monday through or Sunday through Thursday, really. So like we found that out with a local art theater, smaller theater in Cincinnati. We had a couple screenings and did really well. I loved watching the movie with people. Every time I've watched All Your Friends Are Dead with a crowd, I've loved it. And some things actually played funnier than we had intended. And like going back on it, it was like, oh yeah, I guess we were making a conscious decision, but actually we love the how we're hitting with comedy. And with Nick and I doing cable access sketch comedy, it kind of makes sense. And so for the next thing, because I had written and produced and directed Storefront Musical Theater in Chicago, Babysitter Massacre 78, the musical, is an original musical we did that is comedy musical and takes place in the 70s. We did it in this like 100-person theater, black box theater in Chicago. So the next film project we wanted to do wasn't that, but I was like, I would like to do a horror musical comedy. And unlike last time, I'm going to put it on Front Street and we're going to do a Kickstarter telling people this is going to be a horror musical comedy.
Right.
And because it's so specific, we're going to get our funds easy. So started casting it, started getting everybody on board. Everybody, like I'm telling you, whole team, makeup, special effects, locations. It's called Open House. Had everything written, produced, blah, 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 casted. Did a table reading. We kick off the Kickstarter, and everybody knows if we don't get our funds, it's not going to happen. We get retweeted and shared by Edgar Wright, Roger Avery, Kevin Smith. Like everybody's like, yes, this thing sounds really interesting. Did not transfer one bit into funds for Kickstarter. Couldn't even get $6,000. Which I think our minimum was
fucking mind blowing.
12,000. Well, and I got a little pissy, but I was able to talk it out and figure it out, or think of another approach, because you need money in certain areas, even if it's a low to no budget. And so I was like, okay, you know what? People online want to support low to no budget horror movies that cost between $5,000 and $50,000, $100,000 online. But they typically have Dave Sheridan, Felicia Rose. They have a stunt casting, which is, I think, eating up most of the budget. I don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. It's about the movie we want to make, not just be like, look at a thing and maybe you're more likely to look at it because it has somebody you're familiar with. But a lot of the low budget movies that get their funds, the other thing they do besides stunt casting is they're like, hey, look at these women, like amateur porn, that you will get to see naked if you give to this movie.
I can think of one right off the top of my head that went that route.
I can think of 3 filmmakers regionally in Ohio, Kentucky area that do that. Kudos to them. Again, not what we want to do. Not disparaging that filmmaking, but that's not what we want to do. So I was like, fuck. Okay, that's why we didn't get our budget. Because also,
celebrities didn't work, titties didn't work. What are we going to do?
Well, the horror fans, if they want to give to that kind of no budget, no, like they want the TNA and that kind of resonated with thinking about the film festivals too that we didn't get into, because they know the people that want to see these want to see a ton of blood and they want to see possible titties of possible people that might be there at the screening as well. Those actresses will be.
It's kind of weird when we lay it out like this. Yeah, now I'm kind of thinking about it as like, this is just a thing we've all been dealing with.
I mean, I remember going to the conventions to kind of like mention Troma or those other like full moon productions, and like them having their booths with these scantily clad women, and just being like, I don't know what their movies are about, but I think they want me to be interested because they want me to fuck the sleazy girl in leather. Again,
so they're not making elevated horror, but they are making elevated porn. Perhaps it's an artistic bullseye for sure.
Yeah, there's a fine line of like what you're willing to do, and again, not yucking anybody's yum or judging whatever is made. Because now we look back and there's some jewels in there. So keep this in mind. I have something that when we signed with Troma, that my filmmaking partner Nick Hyans sent me, that kind of connects with this. Once we decided to sign the dotted line, but I was like, okay. One of the things in Open House, the story was, it's this pair of realtors who are trapping people, some people in the basement of one of the houses they're showing, because they're secretly, or not secretly, publicly, musical theater enthusiasts, and they're workshopping their most recent original musical, and they're holding people hostage, and they're making them watch. They're also every now and then cutting some of them up and eating them to get rid of the bodies. And so one of the things that existed in Open House was this restaurant that we were cutting to, showing commercials, called Sweetmeats. And then it all ties together kind of at the end, not like in a big twist or anything, but like you're just like, oh, I kind of know what's going on a little bit more. But it was set in present day. While we were putting all that stuff together and doing all the Kickstarter and everything, a friend of mine, Mike Flincham, who's a producer on both the movies and an old childhood friend, an actor. He's Hardware Store Bob and All Your Friends Are Dead. His grandfather's Bobby Mackey, country music legend, ran the haunted bar Bobby Mackey's in Wilder, Kentucky. And I was like, you know what? I have it's Sweetmeats. And I base that kind of off of, what if like a Bobby Mackey turned Colonel Sanders had this restaurant, like this kind of like Waffle House-ish breakfast restaurant. And you were going to play Bob Sweets III in Open House, and connecting it to Hardware Store Bob from All Your Friends Are Dead, where he loses an eye. So he'd wear an eye patch that said Sweetmeats logo on it. And we were gotten to talking. We're like, well, what would the prequel be? Because Pearl had come out, and I was like, I love what they did with Pearl.
Yeah.
I was like, so what would that be? And so we developed, like, because we had already had this restaurant from our other producer, Chris Morris, up in Harrison, Ohio, where we could film all the Sweetmeats commercial stuff at. And it was this Greek restaurant that's a diner that looks untouched by time. Like, again, no budget, no production value, no set deck, except for us buying a couple little things here and there, whatever. You'd be surprised the amount of things we did not set deck throughout the whole movie.
That's the fucking best, though. That's the best.
Just there. Yeah. And so, again, I'm trying to make this not as long-winded as possible. But when we didn't get the budget for that, and we had already developed this prequel idea, when that fell through, and I literally had to call everybody and be like, and I felt awful. I felt terrible, because I'm a carnival barker. Like, this is before we got connected. Lloyd Kaufman at the beginning of those VHSs.
Yep.
Would just be like, the spastic little man would just be talking up this movie. You're just like, hey, buddy, I'm already going to watch it. I got the tape. You don't need to do anything else.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I was like, I don't know who this little gremlin, this little troll is, who's just like, you're about ready to watch a movie? Like, so then we're coming to Open House. It's not going to happen. I feel awful. Everybody's like, dude, you were up front. You said if we couldn't get our budget. I was just like, yep. So then in my mind, because I'm not going to give up, I'm like, okay, what if the restaurant that would let us film for 2 days, what if they gave us 7 days? Will you do that? And the guy's like, yup. In which I'm always up front. So I was like, this is what the movie's going to be, Sweetmeats. And I had already written the outline, and I had already written some country, because I love like Smokey and the Bandit 2 era country.
Yeah.
Like Any Which Way You Can. Don Williams, Jerry Reed, Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton. I love that era of country rock pop. And so I had already written some of that for another project. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to start placing it here. In Chicago, I had done a show called Fleetwood Macbeth, which was Fleetwood Mac music with Macbeth set at a radio station in the 70s. I was like, I'm going to retool that. And that's going to be the story to Sweetmeats.
Right.
And so I can just plug in all this. I got the location. I got some actors, some people who weren't available for open house, like Eileen, who plays Laddie, is now available. And we killed her off way too soon. And all your friends are dead because she's an awesome actress and hilarious. So we're like, this character, movie's going to be called Sweetmeats, the legend of Bobby Sweet. But like, it's Laddie. Like the movie's Laddie. Like it's her origin story. Like it's her story.
Basic Instincts, we might follow Michael Douglas around, but that is Sharon Stone's movie.
Yes, it's the same as Macbeth.
Yeah.
Her last name is also Macbeth.
Yeah,
it's
exactly
not just him. Yeah, if they're taking surnames, which I don't think they necessarily did, maybe just been like a house name, like a crest. But whatever.
Even if they didn't, she took that shit.
Yeah.
She ran that thing, yeah.
Yeah, well, and she's like, can I dump the Grook name? Like, yeah, happily. I'll take like sounds like that's whenever now I'm doing stand up and I'm like, I got a Troma movie coming out. It's called Sweetmeats. I swear it's not a gay porn. Like, please. But so I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But I know not to make the same mistake. So I'm going to switch from Kickstarter to Indiegogo because whatever you raise, you can keep there. Higher fees.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to see if I can parlay any of this goodwill that I had. I'm not going to completely bait and switch. And there's 2 examples of this that happened during this process. I'm not going to not say it's a horror musical comedy, but I'm going to film this proof of concept that makes it feel like it's a sleazy, possibly softcore, drive-in, exploitative porn movie called Sweetmeats. It's going to feature a song. It's going to feature the pig mask. It's going to feature all of this, but I'm going to have 2 big chesty girls in it who are basically about ready to blow this guy and end up getting killed. And that's what I'm going to do to get my money. Not going to be in the movie. Not what the movie's going to be like. Oh, the 2 girls are 2 of the cheerleaders.
Okay, I wondered. I was like, who the fuck could they? I was like, oh, I bet it was a cheerleader. Hey, you know what? Sometimes life just hands you lessons, and you have to learn. A dog doesn't choose to have an invisible shock collar on, but it's got to know where the boundaries are. You know what I mean?
But so, like, I was like, and I'm going to put it in the text that it's Motel Hell meets Rocky Horror Picture Show or Phantom of the Paradise meets Smokey and the Bandit. Like, I'm going to put it in Front Street what it is. Right. But for this video that people are going to watch to possibly give us money, they think they might be getting that. And look, and I apologize. You were asking me what I think Troma means. That's my biggest concern right now is when this movie goes on tour with all these other Troma movies, I think this movie's going to look like Sunday School.
Yeah, Troma, they do have a distinct brand, but what I think you captured is, if not like Troma en masse, I think that comedic kind of wild do-it-yourself energy is there. And I think that's the beautiful thing that people really like about Troma. And so I think you guys will play fine. I did want to ask, though, because we're talking about how this, like, through many forms and, you know, kind of stubbing your toe here and there, and just that ability to kind of stay with it and Frankenstein a project together. Mm-hmm. I love that kind of origin story for this. When did the songs come in? Because I actually was shocked by how many songs you guys wrote for this movie. Because when I watched it, I also just saw the pig mask. And I was like, okay, I get it. It's a diner, cannibals. I get it. Uh-huh. I was fully unprepared that it was a musical myself, right? And it feels like awesome. You guys have like 10 songs in this movie. And not like songs you bought. Like, you guys made these songs. Who was singing them? Who wrote them? How did the songs happen for this? Okay, I thought so.
I wear way too many hats, but like,
because it felt like sometimes I was like, I don't know if he can play guitar, but that sounds exactly like his voice. So I didn't know.
And I'll give you a brief. So I'll wrap up how we got to the road to Tromaville.
Okay.
So we started getting our funds for this, and actually, I had figured out a way that we could make it for way less than open house. For just, if we'd have gotten $6,000, we could have made it work for that, for the iteration of, I was like, how we're going to produce this, how many days, blah, blah, blah. So then Roger Avery again shares, Edgar Wright shares again. Everybody's just saying, yep. And Roger Avery specifically asked for a copy of the movie once it was done, which was awesome. Still waiting to hear back what he has to say. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. But he was just like, Motel Hell meets Rocky Horror Picture Show. He's like, yeah, 100%. He's like, I want to see that. And I think it's less grindhouse, more Southsploitation of those movies like Highballin', or those like Truck Driver, like I said, Smokey and Bandit ripoffs. But when we started getting more funds, I was like, okay, I don't want to stunt cast necessarily, but Lloyd Kaufman he's been sharing the Sweetmeat stuff because you can tag anybody on Twitter, and if they share it, great. If they don't, tag Taylor Swift. Maybe she'll share it. You'll get an audience.
Would you like to contribute a song, Taylor? Maybe.
Yeah, like Jinx Monsoon, Ben de la Creme, a couple drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race shared it. Like, we had a good amount of sharing. A lot of it doesn't translate over into the funding, but it's nice. It's that thing of marketing where if you see it more than once,
right?
But especially from different kind of groups, if you're not just targeting the hardcore, I need to see those titties of that girl that I now follow on Facebook,
right,
or whatever, follows me on Instagram. But so I was like, okay, Lloyd's sharing this. I might be wildly swinging outside of my realm here, but I'm gonna say, hey, would you film a cameo? And I had already written in the script Lloyd Duckwood, this vacuum cleaner.
Right.
I had actually written. This was it could have been as big or as small. So I had also written a series of commercials of other local businesses, and one of which, and they're all double entendres to play with that.
Of course, yeah.
The South.
Don't say your vacuums suck more than ours.
Yes. So it was even like leaning in hard to it. But Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees, I had written a series of oh my gosh, what was the product? It was carpets. So it was Lloyd Duckwood with the vacuum cleaners, and then it was this whole like rug munching, like
carpets match the drape. There's so many.
Yes. There's just so many. And so I was going to bounce between those two, and I had written this series of things with Mickey Dolenz that I thought would have been hilarious, and his manager is just like, no, he's not going to do. I was like, look, we can meet him wherever. We can film it with a green screen. Like, I know how to do it. Take 20 minutes.
I know he's not busy. Come on, dude.
I know he's on the road. I know he's coming to Cincinnati. Like, I was figuring out.
Oh my God,
everything.
He's still on the road? Okay, I revoke my statement. Yeah. I'm sorry, Mickey Dolenz.
Oh yeah, he's working, dude. Dude's got too many ex-wives and children now to work. But so for Lloyd, I was like, Lloyd Duckwood, like, it's already it might have been just Duckwoods. I don't think it was Lloyd Duckwood yet. That would have been pretty eerie. But I was like, will you do this? And he's just like, send me the script. Fan toxic. And I sent him his part. And then I was like, and he's like, I'll do it. I just sent him his part. And I was like, great. Would you film a video saying that you support the movie and are going to be in it that I can put on the crowdfunding? And he did. And I was like, okay. I was like, awesome. And he's like, can you send me the whole script? I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You want to make sure this isn't like Nazi propaganda. You don't want to just see
around now.
Yeah. Your part. Well, not 2 years ago, but even more so now.
True. It was a simpler time back then.
Yeah, it's ramped up considerably. And this is after the fucking, was that South Carolina where there were good people on both sides? Like, we had already had Nazis had kind of come back. Like, but now I kind of feel like Blues Brothers might happen. Like, I feel like.
See, I like your bringing back like the some bitch Southern movies.
Yeah.
Way more. That's the stuff we should be bringing back. Most things, let's leave them in the past.
Yeah. Minus the homophobia and the racism, unless it makes sense. Bring back the sensibility of like the hee-haw or whatever.
Yes, we just want the accents and the outfits. That's what we're looking for.
And just the goofy characters and a little bit of the titillation. But so I sent him the full script, and he emailed me, and this is 2 weeks before we start filming. We've got everything. We've got our funds. His videos have helped get us our funds. I think we had 12,000 by that point, so we'd almost had double that we could do. We're like, we definitely make this movie how it is in the script. And he emails me back. He's just like, hey, do you have any idea of anybody that you would want distributing this or any executive producers on board? And I was like, no. I was like, that's actually one of the things, from our first movie that we would love to do because it would help eyeballs get on it. And he's like, yeah, he's like, let's set up a meeting. Set up a meeting through his assistant at that time, Garrett Sullivan, who now I have figured out probably is the one that read the script.
Right.
And thought it just wasn't Troma flair after now getting to know him over 2 years. Thought it, I swear I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. Thought it was a slightly bit more elevated or in the vein of like.
It makes sense if you've seen it though.
This is what Lloyd does. And now I've experienced it in the little bit of time that I've gotten to know him. What a nice guy. When my twin boys were born, we got sent a package and he had gotten in touch with me in September and then my boys were born in December and we got this package from Tiffany's and it was 2 silver spoons for the boys. And he's like, I love that. They should be born with silver spoons in their mouths. And because when we got the Tiffany's box, I was like, who had a Tiffany's box and is sending us something dumb?
Right.
And then I opened it. It was like from your Uncle Lloyd. And I was like, this is really silver.
That's how you become a legend right there. You become a legend.
He is constantly looking for, and everybody is the new James Gunn and the new Matt and Trey.
Right.
And I'm not saying this in a shitty way. The greatest thing I can say about Troma is they've not lied about anything. And they have not interfered with anything we want to do. The bad thing about Troma is it's as punk now as it was then, and sometimes organization's not the best.
Right.
That's the only negative thing I have to say.
That is the cost of the freedom, though. You know what I mean?
100%.
Once any
which I love.
business gets institution, like this is the Hollywood thing right now. The pillars are shaking. And they're like, what do we do? And it's like, well, there's a whole bunch of people here that have entire industries and houses and careers for not really being contributive, right?
Yeah. Well, and Lloyd
additive. That's the word I was looking for. Additive.
Lloyd loved. I think Garrett's the one who read the script, but I think it played to something that Garrett knew about Lloyd, and Garrett was a dream to work with too, and he's a producer on the film. But he knew Lloyd, like Poultrygeist, the musical elements. Lloyd loves musicals, and so he brought it to him. We talked. He tried to talk us out of not having Troma. And he's like, get in touch with Netflix. Post-pandemic, Netflix wants material. And I'm like, I don't have Ted Sarando's number. I have yours now.
I'll hit him up on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
For a reply.
Well, I'll try. I will tweet. I'm sure I have. I'm sure if you look at my tweets, I've probably thrown that out there because it doesn't matter.
Ted, it's me, Ricky. Can you hear me?
So we made the agreement, and from there on is kind of where we're at now. The music side of it was we had the script that I had written called Roadkill, which literally was, what if Smokey and the Bandit was a horror movie, and instead of on back roads hauling beer that was illegal like it was with certain alcohol content for Coors back then in the 70s, it was black market organs. And it was a competition, and it was a little bit like kind of Cannonball Run as well.
There you go. Yeah.
So we had written this, and the bandit, like main bad guy killer, black harvester of organs guy drove a 77 Trans Am and carried around a portable 8-track player of music that I wrote and produced that sounded like that 70s music, so we could have that vibe without having to pay for rights. Nice. It's like The End Is Near, Catching You. These were all things that we had, and I had already had. I already had arranged. Awesome, yeah. How I write songs is sometimes a cappella, sometimes I write it with a basic guitar, and then I send it to one of the arrangers that I work with, David Kornfeld, who I met in Chicago and did musical theater with, and then we produced the track together. Sweetmeats ended up being Nick Vitus, who owns the restaurant, Nick's Restaurant, that we filmed at. He is in a band and a virtuoso of guitar, bass, recording, and so plays on a lot of the tracks.
Just fucking worked out.
The confluence of everything coming together is crazy. So you can watch the short film we did for Roadkill, featuring a different arranged version of Catching You done by the artist Wonky Tonk that you hear at the beginning of Sweetmeats. So it's, again, I use the buffalo. So many things you make or have ideas for or post-it notes may never come to fruition. But sometimes what's cool about writing it out and not like throwing it away is you can go, ooh, I need to collaborate with past self. And I need this from myself. And I need this. I don't remember.
To your point, man, there's so many false starts and you're working and you do everything you can. And the fates just align against you. There's no reason that all that stuff you did and all that work and ideas just aren't good because something didn't work.
I did not want to star in Sweetmeats. I wanted to direct. Open house. I would have not been in open house except for maybe a cameo of something because I want to direct, because I know that is a fault of being in front of the camera while being the writer, director, producer.
Can we hone in on this a little bit? Yes, so not only are you the writer,
you take it away,
producer. So you have all these jobs, right? Then you have to act. On top of acting, it's musical acting. So you have to be performing in numbers that are choreographed within the movie. How in the fuck did you manage and wrangle all of this? How did you organize that in your brain to get through a shoot day?
I think it's because of my love of things like the Monkees, doing sketch comedy, SNL, all of that, where they have this musical guest and there's this feeling and they break and they cut to a standard set. Right, for the musical guest. So these doing more Phantom of the Paradise, where it's not, they aren't breaking out into song in
like in a Starbucks. Yeah.
Yes, it's more like A Star Is Born, or like it's a dream sequence, or it's like something like this. Which those are all the things that I love. And coming from a sketch and improv background and recording sketches, I don't necessarily feel like I want to make short films. I'm like, I want to take my knowledge of making short films or doing sketches that I've already done and try to figure out how to draw those things together to make at least an 80-minute feature. That's what I really want to do. I want to tell a narrative. And I'm actually working on a no budget feature that way with my cell phone as we speak right now. We'll see if anything comes of it. But literally, I'm doing it as a no budget. If I don't have it around my house, or if someone isn't doing it as a favor, and I'm not going to ask people to give a lot of time.
I think that's a beautiful exercise that a lot of us lose that element, right? It's like, because we start trying to professionalize ourselves because we got to take the next step. It's got to be bigger. It's got to be better budget. It's got to show money returns. It's got to give us meetings or an agent. I do. And again, I think that's a Troma thing, right? It's like, sometimes you just have to make shit and you have no idea what that is, but it will always benefit you to just be making stuff.
Well, and you'll make it like this is like talking about the criticisms from before. If you hear a note, and you will never be a failure, whatever you make, even if someone's like, that sucks, it's not a failure, because you will only benefit to the next thing that you do, whether it's writing, whatever, because you did that thing. The only way I think you can be a failure is if you get a note or a criticism and you dismiss it and you keep on making the same mistake.
Right. Absolutely. Well, it's like I tell my kid, right? He's like really into sports now, and he like gets really pissed when he misses a shot in a game. And I was like, dude, if you shoot 40%, that's 4 out of 10. You're in the fucking Hall of Fame. Like, you're one of the best players.
Tell them,
we don't shit on NBA players for missing threes, dude. You got to take shots.
Wayne Gretzky. Like, you miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Yeah, Wade Gretzky and Michael Scott. Yeah, I remember. Like, legendary quote.
Again, television. We'll just pop culture all day.
I know. This is our kind of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You thought you were here for Sweetmeats. You're really here for a lecture on 70s TV.
It's funny. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a big player in the next feature we might be making that is not necessarily horror, more in the vein of like if Coen Brothers made Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for $50,000. I don't know how much Blood Simple cost to make, but that I'm sure they had way more than $50,000.
Yeah, for sure.
But so when we did sign with Troma, Nick Hyance texted me. And again, keep in mind, Nick Hyance and I grew up in Northern Kentucky, Campbell County. And Northern Kentucky, it's just Cincinnati. It's not super rural. If you go a half an hour south of where we are, gets a little bit more what you think Kentucky is.
Yeah, that's the wrong turn area of Kentucky.
Yeah. Like you done made a wrong choice.
Yeah, we
fella.
like to kid our Southern brothers here in the Indiana Hoosier State.
But we both visited one of the same video stores growing up. We both went to. What he has that I don't have is some connection to a comedy that I didn't necessarily grow up with, and he had a connection to those shitty 90s like martial art movies like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh,
so he's,
dude, yeah.
Like I've given him some film, some cinema, and he's given me some of that, and we just fucking eat it up. But so when we signed with Troma, who he was aware of, he knew the horror section of our mom and pop non-blockbuster Showtime video. He knew big boxes. He knew the bait and switch, which again, I hope Troma fans aren't too bait and switched or backers from the proof of concept to the movie that is. Here's the second example that I said I would mention. I'm going to do it in one story. Is the first poster we got done by Mark Schoenbach, the pig mask poster.
Yeah.
Love it so much. You've seen the movie. That ain't the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty metal poster.
But I justified it because I was like, I feel like Microwave Massacre. What a good looking poster. What a shitbag movie. Like
posters are a tool, dude.
Yeah, and like the boxes, and so that's. And I loved it. And Mark just did a friend of mine, Adam Marcus, who directed Jason Goes to Hell. I got to become friends with him over the years. He just did his poster for his Heart of Darkness documentary that's coming out about Jason Goes to Hell. Amazing artwork, and this is getting alternative artwork wasn't a slight against him. I was just like, I could get tagged with being bait and switch for two things with this project, which I know I can justify with the history of posters and box art and stuff, and that's fun. And Troma fans will get
don't
that.
Judge a book by its cover, and it's some comedians like, why the fuck do you think they pay to have such elaborate covers?
Well, you didn't even know what they want. You didn't even know that it was a musical, and so
I had no idea. He just sent me, here's this movie, Sweetmeats, and I saw the poster, and I was like, okay, I immediately know what I'm watching. Turns out I had no fucking idea.
luckily you got sent that poster and then weren't like, I'm fucking turning this off. This is fucking
I'll tell you, there's nothing that I'm sicker of than the hardcore kind of like indie horror movie. Yeah. It's just no fun, like blood and guts and what. Like, I get it. I know why we all try to make that shit. This was a pleasant surprise to me because at least I was like, oh, okay, now I'm interested. Like I was planning, I was like, all right, I'll watch this over my phone while I'm doing this and that. And I was just like, this is not at all what I was expecting. So that part of the journey, I appreciate.
I'm glad that it's not the bait and switch, but I did have, and I'm blanking on her name.
They're still cannibals. There's still a pig mask.
Everything is still in there.
People, like shitloads of people are eating human bodies. Right?
So as an experiment, we started writing, a friend of mine, Eric Hunter, who's a horror author. You can check out his books on Amazon, I think. A childhood friend, because that's, again, just how you theater friends, gypsies, just wherever I've been, I've accumulated somebody that's more talented than I am, like Timmy, who plays Jerry, which I want to hear what you think of the movie, and I swear I'm gonna stop talking about the production of it. But him and I wrote an in-universe sequel script that would be that intense horror that you dislike, but knowing that we were doing it, called Sweeter. That is, the premise is a farm to table of sweetmeats, and it's the lineage. It's basically like,
those are the kind of people I want to see get processed too. That would really work for me. You're following my brain path exactly.
But so when we signed with Troma, so I can't remember her name, but check out on any of the posts that I've tagged for the artist that we did. I had commissioned do a retro. I call it the retro poster. There's a lot of elements of 70s Southsploitation that are in it, and you can find that poster. It has a nod to, and I won't say a ripoff of one of the Race with the Devils posters with the border, which is a favorite of
all
mine.
All art is just an homage and reimagination and re-amalgamating of art we love, man.
And it kind of looks like flesh-eating mothers that Troma had done. Kind of looks like that artwork.
Oh,
and I was like,
God.
okay.
I had forgotten about. How could you forget a title like that? What kind of life am I leading?
Such a great. I love poster artwork like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, the artist who did the retro poster, that I'm fine with both of the posters being out there, but I feel a little bit more comfortable that there is we did it as an insert on the Blu-ray, so you can switch out the posters if you want, if you don't want the metal pig mask. But so when we signed with Troma, Nick Hines is like, "Are you sure we want to sign with Troma for this deal?" And then he sent me on a series of Troma movie trailers that are on what is that? Not Venmo, but what's the
God, what is it? Not Venmo, Vimeo.
Tubi?
Vimeo.
Are you talking Tubi?
Vimeo.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Tubi would have probably
That's
worked
the
too.
hipster YouTube, yeah.
But Vimeo with the streaming. Well, it hosts some higher rate of footage as well if you're sharing, like with passwords in the industry. But he sent me a bunch of those trailers, and one was, gosh, what was it? It was Shannon Tweed, and it was this '90s straight to what was it? Rusty Cowgirls or something, and it was set in the Wild West, but it was topless women with big fake 80s 90s tits just out in the trailer, and it's just like, oh, Rowdy Cowgirls.
Yeah,
maybe that's what it was, Rowdy Cowgirls. And
Bronco Busters. It could have had so many titles.
Well, I was just like, you know what? I didn't know breast augmentation was so prevalent in the Wild West days.
Yeah, just tumbleweeds, dude.
But he's like this, and then he showed me this another. But I was like, the production value looks really good. He's like, are you sure this is who we want to do stuff with? And he sent me this one that looked like it was filmed with a flip phone, and it was basically a knockoff of 40 Days, 40 Nights. I don't even remember the title of that one.
Right.
But he's like, are we sure we want to go with Troma? And I was like, yeah. Okay, I think that brings us to where we are.
I think. I love that though. Again, what I keep honing in on in the conversation is just, I think what you're capturing is what is so fucking important. Kind of the idea of this part of the podcast, right, is just to help people hear from other people that are on this journey, right, as we all start this filmmaking thing. What you honed in on, I think, is such a crucial element, right? There's no perfect piece of advice. There's no perfect pre-production or script or shoot.
Don't be precious. You cannot be precious.
What you're saying is you can't be precious. Just every day,
that doesn't mean you can't be
in front of you.
That doesn't mean you can't be an artist.
No,
you can be an artist and then collaborate with.
Right.
What's funny is I think there are some specific the banana bit that Jerry does in the movie. There's only one thing I don't want to give away with the movie, and that's Jerry just in a full where his character arc goes to. It's the only thing I don't want to give away. But the banana, Timmy, who's a sketch comedian and improviser from Chicago that I had done stuff with, who's a fantastic actor, he said before we started filming, he's like, I have this idea to do this thing with this banana, with the character. And so I'm like, I'm all ears. You're very funny. And he pitched it to me and Nick. And we were like, that has a story arc. Yeah. And then I wrote the song, Diddle My Fiddle, after that. So that is a late in production, like putting together and then getting connected with Dustin Matthew Taylor, who sings on that, plays on that, and does The Legend of Bobby Sweets, because he was able to bring something that was a little different that helped with kind of like the wraparound, a different sound, a little bit more modern, folksy country sound. And I got to meet him because Timmy grew up in Owensboro with him. In Owensboro, Kentucky. So that's how he came on board, and it was just this kismet thing. But when he pitched the banana story, I was like, oh, there's pathos. This isn't just this dumb visual gag that you're going to upstage anybody with. But what was great is, so Eileen, who played Laddie, had already been filming for 3 days before Timmy joined us. And the first scene we filmed was the counter scene. And we did a take. And then Eileen, who's also an improviser and sketch comedian who didn't know Timmy, just stood back and was like, okay, I have to keep my eye on you. If I'm in a scene with you, you're always going to be doing something like game sees game.
Yeah, right.
Where me, with the amount of hats I'm wearing and the amount of shit that I'm juggling, like I had help. Trace, who was our script continuity supervisor and assistant director, which here's some indie film advice. Never have your assistant director be your script supervisor. They are two roles that do not go well.
They each have super important responsibilities and need to be on their own. Yeah.
But again, we didn't have an assistant director and a script supervisor for All Your Friends Are Dead. With a higher budget, that's something we could afford, but we still didn't have enough money to have 2 different people do those roles. We actually did. The other guy dropped out a day before filming.
Perfect.
And so Trace is like, if you want, I can do this. And then while we're filming, because Heinz and I had the shorthand with doing sketch, Trace, as the script supervisor and the assistant director, was helping me manage things on set, which is great. But when he's being the script supervisor for these group of improvisers, and like, it's crazy how close though the shooting script is to what we filmed, but there's still this looseness. And there's this run and gun because we don't have a big production. It's not a lot of big setups. We didn't use lighting. We used natural lighting. We used little bits of some little box lightings here and there for specific things. Right. But we just knew with the production and the time we don't have time to waste. And we don't have money to pay for what we're doing. We're going to approximate as close as we can with the natural or little accents. So we'd film something and Trace, as the assistant director, would be great. He'd have everyone organized and on board. But after we're done filming it and we'd go, all right, on to the next setup, he'd go, that's not going to edit with what you just filmed based on what we're doing here. And then Nick and I would look at each other and we're like, look, we don't want to be the assholes who are like, we've been friends for a long time. We've worked a lot together, to shut someone down. We want it to be open. But we'd look at each other and just be like, no, that will. Like, we get that gag.
We'll take responsibility for the edit
if it doesn't. But we weren't sure because we weren't doing we weren't looking at the footage and editing as we go. We were occasionally looking at footage just to make sure that nothing fucking glitched like super hardcore.
Right.
But yeah. So Trace having all these people was awesome. But so in that counter scene when Eileen's just like, Timmy.
Yeah.
Like, okay. I think one of the jokes that wasn't in it that he came up with when we did a couple run-throughs of rehearsals before we shot was, shouldn't we make the text bigger in the menus instead of making the menu smaller? And I was like, yep, we're adding that. And Eileen, I don't think we had briefed the banana story, the arc of the pathos of the travel of the banana to Jerry's Dream Heaven song at the end of the credit. I don't think we had expressed her this new element that wasn't in the script. Right. So I think she was like, oh, motherfucker's holding this bright yellow banana. Like, he's going to be drawing and he's sitting up on the counter like, no. But I was like, but what's great is Timmy's a great improviser and a giver too. So he's not going to upstage you. He wants to play. And so they ended up working
I remember that back when I was at UCB doing improv, and all of a sudden you'd have like a new guy show up and you'd be in a scene, right? It's like, all right, it's a barbecue. It's a family barbecue. Here's the suggestion, right? It's like, okay. And then one guy would just come in and be like, I'm a gorilla from the zoo. And it's like, God damn it.
Look at me.
God damn it. Like, what?
I have attention issues. Like,
Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
There was always everything we did. There was always like one guy who's like, I'm going to come in here hot and show I am funny as fuck.
And Timmy and I, like, Eileen has done Class of the Second City and stuff, but like in Chicago, Timmy and I both, Timmy was part of Cruise Ship for Second City, one of their casts, and we both did IO. So like, yeah, like I like sketch and plays more than improv because of just the commitment, but I love working with others. So like stand-up is not my favorite thing. It just makes some extra money. And it's just this other great writing exercise or performative exercise. But in that scene, in the counter scene, after we did a couple takes, Eileen clocked Timmy. But then when we were setting up, she's like, I'm like, okay, and we're doing this take or whatever. And Eileen goes, okay, great. So Timmy is sitting on the counter with the banana. I'm coming in and saying this, and I'm mad at my dad, and he's coming in here. And Ricky, you're sitting back there slack-jawed looking like an idiot. And I'm like 100% curated that way. My character's stuttering inability to talk most of the time and to be a pushover was a necessity because I did not want to be in the thing again. I did not want to be in the movie. Right. So I'm going to give. That's why Laddie has these giant monologues. Like my biggest criticism is those 2 long take scenes. I love them. She's amazing in it. I think they're a little too similar and maybe the least interesting through camera movements or anything else in the movie.
I totally disagree. I'm hopping in here. I
Okay.
had that down as a bullet point. That was my favorite scene, that big long oneer that you did right after you get the restaurant review. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
as a camera guy and a director, I was picking up on the blocking
Yeah.
and the storytelling, and I'm like, oh shit, this is still going. It's still going. I mean, it helps that
This
you
is
don't.
still going.
No, but
In the
it's
credits,
still going.
the 20-minute credits, you're like,
You can
this
pull
is
that
still
for your
going.
poster. Yeah, you can use that pull quote for your poster.
oh, don't worry. The criticism I have already thought of is, did you guys pick up on what the name of the outro song was before the 20-minute credits began? Is Have You Had Enough? So I am fully prepared that some letterbox fucking asshole, which again, I want this to happen. I would love this, is going to be like, and then Glore has the audacity
Yeah.
to have its final song, parentheticals, but not really, be Have You Had Enough? And I said, yes, I have.
You know
And
what,
then,
sir? I have. I have.
And then
One
the movie
star.
proceeded to go on for another 20 fucking minutes and have like 2 more songs or 3 more songs. Now I can't remember because it's been a minute since I've watched the movie.
But I appreciate that effort, and because it's not that it was boring, it was that it was interesting, and then you realize, oh, they have not cut yet. The shot is
Yeah.
still continuous, and that's really impressive because you just get sucked into it because you're watching these actors
Yeah.
behave, and you're not being manipulated. I mean, there is strategy and craft involved, and where
Mhm.
you're placing the camera, where you're moving the actors around. It helps that maybe you don't have light stands to navigate around, but
Mhm.
it really helps you sink into the movie because you're just watching these characters behave without the addition of the manipulation that cinema
Yeah.
can do.
Well,
What
So I love
especially
that
because
stuff.
you have so many of these kind of comedic setups, right, between the two guys. We're like, okay, we're doing like a fun bit now. But yeah, when Laddie really turned dark, right? And I'm just one of those guys that believes like if an actor is really sinking in, like no scene has ever been ruined by just holding a camera on an actor who's doing a great job. Like no scene has ever been
You
ruined
know
by
who
that.
ruins it? The director, who is either in the screen, on the screen, or off camera, who yells cut, not trusting his director of photography / almost co-director Nick Hines. You know how many of those with Eileen and other actors we had to cut the audio because I yelled cut?
Oh no.
And it's just like, so this is something I've clocked for next time. Granted, I'm probably not going to be in it. I'm going to be there with,
Right.
seeing what he sees to be able to direct a little bit better. But I already told him, I was like, I'm not yelling cut in the next movie.
It's tough, man. You're wearing a lot of hats with Jerry curls in this movie, dude. Yeah. It happens.
There is literally a lot. So the one, there are a couple of things that like, if anybody ever nerdily picks up on it, that we realized through editing, Nick Hines was just like, what's crazy in those long scenes where Eileen's talking to you? He's like, there's a bunch of moments and they're very Faustian. We do it, we do it a few times, but it's almost like we know we're doing it. Like we know we're doing this overwrought, like kind of a monkey paw or deal with the devil kind of thing. Like we get it. Like if anybody's
the 5-second marriage consummation, the literal handshake. Yeah.
Yeah, like we get, like we're in on this how steamroll this is, and this is in our world. There's this, so the way I'll connect the one thing, the art thing. If like Kevin Smith, a reviewer, was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's amazing that it's black and white and looks like shit." It's almost as if they're doing it through the security cameras, and Kevin Smith's like, "Yep." It's not that Dave Klein said we can't film under these fluorescent lights, make it black and white. So Nick Hines picked up. He's just like, in a lot of these where Laddie approaches him or Jerry approaches him to basically give him an out, gives him an option. Now, Laddie at any of those points when she gives Bobby an option could have also killed him. Now that we know where the movie goes, but he's like, Hines picked this up. He's like, within framing, he's like, there's usually an exit sign somewhere.
Oh, nice.
In the background, almost as if, and Bobby goes the other way in all the scenes. He either doesn't choose that exit way,
love that.
or, well, no, It was not on purpose.
What up?
He just picked up on this.
I'm going to edit that out. This was totally brilliant set deck. But no, because that is one of the things I wondered in the movie. I was like, God, like her whole journey is she's like, I am so sick of these fucking mouth-breathing men around me. Like, I am suffering. And I was like, that feels like the kind of mood that is going to really work with audiences right now. And I was like, why doesn't she kill him?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, because he's going to be the fall guy. Like, when this blows up, it's going to be the guy who's trying to sell his fucking 5 country music records.
Yeah.
And she'll be fine. She's
it's
going
this
to keep
evangel.
going.
I mean, they're probably going to become the bakers, right? They're going to create their own church. It's going to be the Church of Bobby Sweet, and it's going to be Righteous Gemstones, which
I thought you meant the bakers as in like, I was like, how do you bake a human?
No,
in a
Tammy
bread?
Faye Baker.
I was like, is this a Hot Pocket? And then I was like,
Well,
I get you. Yeah.
I mean, it is Sweeney Todd. It is Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
It is Macbeth.
It's some bitch Sweeney Todd.
Some bitch.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we were trying to do was to get the tone right and everybody on board. And when you're working with really smart, funny people like Timmy and Eileen and everybody else in the movie that we had come on for a day or whatever, like Kim, who was the pizza guy, who's just like, he's just like, man, he's like, this is going to be way too much. And I was like, just trust me. He's like, you're going to be the Martin Short of the movie. People are going to either love your scene or fucking hate it. There's not going to be any in between.
Oh, he killed me. I love that little appearance. Yeah, Martin Short is a great way to put it.
I can see the Martin Shortness now, because that was another scene where I was like, God, this is like a lot. Like, they really want to rub my face in this character. Right?
And so Kim was like, I don't want to come off gay. Am I coming off gay? And I said, no, you will never come off gay, because this dude loves pizza.
Yeah, this dude
he doesn't want to. Yeah, he doesn't want to fuck Bobby. He fucks pizza.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. There's all kinds of foods that people like to fuck. Don't shame.
Yeah, don't yuck.
I'll tell you, the
yum.
one lady I wanted to fucking murder was the I just walk here because it's close lady.
Yeah,
and at the end,
that's my mother-in-law.
Is it real? Oh, yeah. Okay. Because I love movies that do
not
that too.
Not an actress.
Right, but see, you pick up that she's not an actress immediately, but it gives it this, like, she did a great job of just being, like, really that person. Like, Scorsese does that a lot, right? He just drops Mama Scorsese in, and it just adds, like, a flavor to it that makes it feel like this real, like, shithole-in-the-wall diner, which I really liked.
There's this weird, like, So the one note that I did give when we were doing the movie was, especially for the long scenes with, like, me and Laddie, is we are the VH1 or CMT movie of the week, over dramatized Lifetime version of the true story of Bobby Sweet. Yeah. Because the movie is framed in this children's book. This is a fairy tale. So originally we had it set in 78, but then because of all the anachronisms and different things, that's actually a joke we removed from the movie, from the opening narration and the story. Was we're like, it actually at the end of the day, because it's a book, it's a children's book, it's an inaccurate, it's an unreliable narrator. Who knows what the real story is or how it was?
Yeah, we're kind of watching it through that kid's imagination.
Yeah, and through the book, and like the Golden Leaf book, that'd be awesome if it was that fucked up, and it's just like, and then you fed it to the giant man-sized meat. 2 things we deleted because you don't delete much, and like there's some bad special effects that was nobody's fault, just time, edited to just make it look like a stylistic choice. Was we deleted the calling out that it's 78. So it's just this weird, ambiguous, like 70s.
It's death proof. It exists in both times.
Yeah. That's, yes. Mention a much better filmmaker. Yes, that's what I was trying to.
Exact same. You guys are side by side on the highway. Yes.
So we have a lot of the same appreciations. But that, having that be omitted, I think benefits. And we made a joke about, at our own expense, that Nick Hines rightfully was just like, we should take that out. We shouldn't make the joke before someone else does that there's inaccuracies because it's a children's book. And he sold me on it because I was like, no, we got to call it out. Like, this is like, let's make the joke before anybody else. And he's just like, no, he's like, I don't think so. The other thing, so it's more like Star Wars, like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Just gobbledygook, means nothing.
Right.
The other thing that got deleted that we spent so much time for was I wanted to have the Johnny Depp Beth bed blowing up blood.
Oh, okay. From Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, from the organ, from the meat grinder, and we filmed it. So Chris Morris, him and I and his wife designed the look of the meat grinder, and they actualized it. But because they don't come from theater, and I'm not a good instructor, made it out of real wood. That motherfucker was so fucking heavy. We had to build stilts to turn it upside down outside of Bobby Mackey's, and we had the footage. It just we couldn't play with it enough to make it look right. And Chris and I on ladders literally poured blood upside down to make it look like that geyser.
How many gallons of blood did you guys get? Because I bet in that movie they had like trucks of blood.
Not just for that scene, but for the demon scar stuff at the end, or any time that there is blood in the movie. We did the special effects team, Lizzie Shrebus, her dad Steve, and Sophie Forrest, who was our special effects and makeup team. They did keep track. I got to get that number from them because it was a shit ton. We did use a shit ton of blood.
So we did an effects heavier one this summer, and that's like how you mark it. I think we got up to 20 gallons in a scene, and we're like, I was making it out of peanut butter and soap and shit, and I was just like, this is the happiest I am, just in my little shed making just
like
an old churning lady.
But so like getting everybody on board for the tone. Somebody who got the Indiegogo exclusive Blu-ray watched it and sent me a really nice message on Instagram and said, this felt like a Christopher Guest meets John Waters movie.
There you go.
And I said, I love that. It is nowhere near the artistry of those two people, but I do like that as if I was going to pitch this to somebody.
Yeah.
Like, what would you use? I was like, thank you. I think, because then it tells you if you're like, oh, I don't like Christopher Guest or I don't like John Waters. Great. Then you're not going to criticize the movie because you already don't like those things. So you just don't watch it. But
I am always shocked, by people on like Letterboxd that just watch movies that they know they're going to hate. I had someone, they're like, why do you have so many movies 3.5 and 4 stars? You're like, because I'm middle-aged. I know exactly what I like about movies. I can just look at something and be like, I can 80% know I'm going to like or not like. I don't waste my time on shit I'm not going to like, even if it's supposed to be a great movie.
And I'm not even criticizing criticizers. That's great. I just hope you articulate it. I think more reviews should be like, well, I don't like this, but if you
talk
like
about
this,
what's in the fucking thing.
Yeah. So someone did post when our trailer went live on Reddit, was like, oof, like this movie looks like it has a lot of heavy lifting, being another cannibal restaurant, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. It's not going to be the best one of those. Like it's... But if you watch it, maybe it will be like, oh, that was quirky. Like, I know the story, but maybe it did surprise me in a couple areas.
It is bizarre. I don't know how you feel about this, right? But I always use my mom as like the analog. Like my mom loves film. She watches more than anyone you know. She has her little Regal pass, so she goes and sees everything in the theater. She loves watching movies. So she's seen a bunch, but she doesn't know any kind of like at an academic level, anything about movies she thinks. But her language is so ingrained. And I always wonder, even someone like her, I was like, I wonder how much audiences understand the difference budgets make. And how many movies just kind of get unfairly kicked in the nuts for not having money. Like, yes, I can't make something look like the things that you're used to seeing because we are working at like 1% of 1% of that budget.
Yeah, and that is... one of the main things that we're looking at beyond for the next film is me not being in it. And now it is going to conclude. It is a weird kind of trilogy movie with All Your Friends Are Dead and Sweetmeats. I call it the King's Shit of Turd Mountain trilogy.
There you go.
Because the lead characters all are.
Is it about that giant ball that you were mashing into the toilet?
Oh God, I fucking love talking about your mom. So my mom read the script to Sweetmeats, and she's like, it's fun. What it is? She's like, only criticism is get rid of the turd. And then I explained the metaphor of the turd and like what it is, what it means for the rest of the movie. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, keep it.
All right, keep the turd.
Yeah,
enjoy the turd.
Yeah. She's like, it just seems gross. I was like, yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I sent we're doing a fundraising for our new movie, Mr. Cream Jeans Hidey Hole, a horror compendium. And I sent it to my brother, who's like a really smart, like, financial guy. And he's like, well, a lot of investors are going to be turned off by the word "come" on the first page. And I was like, yes, I agree
not the
with
investors
you.
We're looking for.
You're right. And I was like, those people are not investing in Mr. Cream Jeans Hidey Hole unless they can go there and, cream their jeans.
Yes.
So yes, fair criticism. That's exactly what we're going for.
And it is probably the most Troma bit of the movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Except for maybe the pulling out of the intestines during the Demon Scar Eat the People music video. I think those might be the two areas that are what you would think would be like, hey, a movie opens 10 minutes in with the giant turd in a toilet with corn in it, and it's pretty gross. And it's like, yeah, it's a Troma movie. What are you watching, Troma? You got Troma on right now? You got the turd?
Troma? I don't know. I found it, again, it's a movie that you can see. Like, you were even saying 7 days, and in my brain, I was like, how the fuck did you film this in 7 days?
That's the pull quote for the poster. It's a movie you can see.
There you go. You're welcome to it. It
is.
But dude, again, I don't think people appreciate enough just having a movie you can see and how gargantuan any task is. And again, you can see the rough edges. You can see that it was shot fast. Mm-hmm. Lighting is what it is, right? Like, sure, I get all that. That's what movie making is, though. But what I always look for is beyond production stuff, right? Because you could fucking crush low budget horror movies all day on production stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest sicknesses in people making low budget horror right now, they're so fucking focused on it's got to look like $1 million movie. And it's like, brother, it will never look like $1 million movie. What you need to have is $1 million ideas, right? That if someone is rich,
it's exactly what you said.
Yeah,
people don't understand what that means. What the look means in correlation to a budget, which again, it's not my biggest stressor is getting people to see it. So
that's a whole other battle. Like that after you've done it, how do I get it out, right? There's so many separate stages of warfare in making a movie. But I think what I love about your movie is, yes, is the production limited? No doubt about it. What I see is energy and passion, right? That's what Here, I'll do it. I'll do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll rearrange our little squares. No, but that's what I mean. That's what I look for in a movie, right? Did you have ideas that are worth me watching a low budget movie, right? Don't give me the same fucking cannibal restaurant shit I've seen 50 times. Don't try to scare my fucking pants off, right? Like, just fucking have something to do. And I think your movie does, right? It's very funny. I thought the songs were kind of tongue-in-cheek. They remind me a little of Wheeler Walker Jr., which I'm a huge fan of, right? So, like, I was giggling at that, and then there is blood and guts. If you're there for that, there's enough of that I think you complete the bargain with the audience, right?
We made the conscious decision, and again, it's not putting us on a step stool because no one's going to give an artist award for thinking this way or a moral high ground because we don't. I am agnostic, so like not showing nudity is not a different. It's not. There's no reason for the choice except for we just don't feel comfortable doing it. Like if you want to watch porn, if you want to see, someone,
we're dealing with this now. It is such a weird thing. You just approach an actress.
Your cum movie. I would be disappointed if there was not nudity of some sort.
This is a real story. We were watching this movie.
Brain. I want to see everything.
So we have tons of fake dicks in the movie, tons, right? But it is weird to go to an actress and be like, hey, we want you for this role. And they're like, oh, what's the arc of the character? It's like, well, also we want your tits hanging out. Like it's a bizarre world. And then you start being like, are the tits that worth it? And then we're like, well, if we make a sex comedy that's like the most sexless movie ever, it's a weird math, right? You have to juggle that.
It becomes this joke of, and James Gunn, to connect to Troma, has already done it. It's porn without porn.
Yeah, so I was at a screening at a festival, and this guy looks over at me, and the trailer starts for this movie. I won't name it in case anyone's offended. And this guy and his wife look over, and she's like, we have to watch a full movie at a festival. So Heath and I's movie had played at like the midnight block. This is the late block, right? And they lean over, and we're all pretty fucking drunk and stoned and shit. And the guy leans over, and he goes, let's make a bet. Does this movie have all the tits or none of the tits? And I go, I think I'm going full tits. He's like, I'll take none. And like 2 minutes in, he leans over and goes, all the tits wins. Like you immediately knew it was going to be one of those movies with all or nothing.
So this may be 3 or 4 things that not deleted, but we didn't film. So when I developed the cheerleaders, to give a little bit of that what the proof of concept have, to at least like be like, yes, we know the Southsploitation kind of goes to this ridiculous costumes on the town community, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so these two things connected. I was like, all 3 of these actresses would be fine. One was a Playboy playmate, Amanda Chilele.
Oh, there you go.
They would show their breast for this, for when they're getting their breasts chopped off. And another thing we didn't film, kind of played in the same sandbox, was some of those ridiculous food items actualized in that montage where you see the porksicles. We do see the tongues get pulled off, and those are the popsicle tongues. It's pork, it's tongue, fucking disgusting. They do nothing, like they're not even showing it like in its flavored strawberry. It's just like we froze their tongues and you're eating them. But like the balls,
hand sandwich, yeah,
the chicken, the hands, the breast, and like we talk about all those things. Those are there. We just don't have the time, and it doesn't really matter. So like the singles that Bobby released there, I had written, like, you see the jacket art, and we could have done that. We could have spent a day and we talked about it. But we're like, at the end of the day, does it elevate the movie? No. If we had the budget, would we have done it like a second unit in our art department? 100%. Just add seasoning to it a little bit more. But we don't necessarily need it. So, and we had access to the restaurant. We could have gone back, and Nick, as Vitus, for the restaurant owner who did the music and played the bass in the band, or did part of the music, he was like, I have a bunch of uncooked meat and different things that I'm going to get rid of. Do you want to come in and do some gross stuff with it for the B-roll? And we talked about it. We're just like, no. Like, I'd rather use that time.
Is that going to be the thing that separates this movie?
So the breast, the showing the nudity, we were like, okay, we could, but I don't think it adds anything. And so that's why we didn't. We could have, but we didn't. And it didn't really, like, what does that set the tone? Does it make it weird? Like, where does that go? One of the other things was, and this would have been closer to a Troma, and it didn't happen for a couple of different reasons, but ultimately didn't happen for everything I just said. But was when Eileen, after she takes Bobby in the back and inseminates herself with him, because that's all it is. It ain't sex. Right. Whatever it is.
Did that really happen? Was that a fucking setup? You'll have to decide yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we see the lineage later on. It happens.
Oh, shit. Point. Yeah, we did. All right. Yeah. Don't decide.
What happens at some point. But again, it's the universe of, I mean, they're like, well, if you did a Sweetmeat sequel, well, I have the idea for Sweeter. That is the Saul Hostel version at the farm to table. I also was like, if someone wanted to pay me to make a Late Night with the Devil-esque, like 2 years later, Bobby and Laddie are doing a variety show, Jerry Lewis Telethon with other acts.
Yeah.
Like, that's a movie and something fucking goes wrong there. I would fucking make that in a heartbeat. I'd love the ambiguity in the different world that their lives could be or were. That's fun. But one of the scenes was, after we come out of the closet, Laddie says, if I ever see you touching or talking to somebody else again in that way, I'll cut off your dick and we'll serve hot dogs. I had written that Bobby flashes seeing a woman take a bite of a hot dog that just looks like a dick. And she goes like, huh? And it snaps back to then Bobby being like, oh. I asked my mom to do that, to be that. So I don't know what Freudian thing that says. To be the dick biter? To be the dick biter.
Wow.
And she was like, sure, okay, I guess. And then before we were going to do it.
Mom. What a cool mom.
Before we were going to do it, she's like, oh, family members and blah, blah, blah are going to see this movie. She's like, I don't want to do it.
Church ladies are going to see this. And you're like, Mom, I assure you, they're not going to find this movie.
I was like, that's fine. I was like, I don't want anybody doing anything they don't feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
Flash forward to her filming that Saturday. All of the extras in the movie, we filmed in 2 days. Jesus. So if they're at the restaurant or the basement of Bobby Mackey's, 2 days. And 100 people signed up. I think 50 showed up. Because again, that's that thing you got to play with. And Trace organized all of that, which was amazing. But she's in the movie with my dad waiting in line, who plays Ponce de la Surge. She, the day of, watches the actor the older gentleman who's in his Motel Hell costume,
Right.
who's Rick Hasselbach, the husband of Amy, who ended up becoming on board as producer and is going to help produce our next movie. But at that point, he was just happy to be in the movie and an actor. He's like, I was like, so would you bite a porcicle, which was just frozen milk in a tongue thing that I already had from when we did A Nightmare on Back Street in Chicago, which was our version of Nightmare on Elm Street. I built a Freddy koozie phone attachment that had a rubber tongue coming off. So I had the mold to make the porcicles from that. And he's like, what do you want me to do with it? He's like, do you really want me to go to town on it? And I was like, oh, again, I don't want someone do something they're not comfortable with. I was like, whatever you think going to town on it means, if you're comfortable with that, yes, do that. So my mom watched that guy, Rick, do that, which my dad's name's Rick too. And he's just like, there was so much more footage of him just really giving it to the porcicle.
Fucking mowing it.
My mom pulled me aside and said, that gentleman's probably not too much younger than I am. And everybody applauded him when he was done doing it, doing the show. And my mom's like, I think I'm okay with doing the hot dog thing. I was like, oh, that ship's already sailed. Like, we're like no, it's
too
like,
late
it's
now.
done.
You missed your 15 minutes, Mom.
Yeah.
In summation here, right? We always like to end with the same question. I think what this conversation has illustrated to me, right? Again, I love you are clearly like abounding with creativity type of guy. You've already mentioned like 5 other movies you want to make, 5 other movies you were going to make, all the shows, all the sketches.
Roadkill's not happening. We did the short. I love the idea. We filmed that at Bobby Mackey's. That's not happening, even though
you
I
never
love the
know.
script.
Giant check could come.
Oh, if someone wants to buy it from me and make it, 100%. I got 30 scripts of varying different production levels that you'd need of finances. You want to make something of mine? I would hand it over. I have a separate, like, these are kids I can put up for adoption. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Those just give me money for, mail order brides.
Happy to do it. Roadkill, what put the nail in the coffin for me is I found, and I think it just came out, it was like a straight to streaming or whatever, straight to video, whatever that is now, movie called Roadkill. And it looked like, and it just came out, I think, last year. It has a lot of similarities just in the trailer. And I'm like, cool, great. Like you mentioned, Death Proof. Yeah, like if you're going to do Smokey and the Bandit, but he's a killer, Death Proof kind of already did that.
We're all circling the same things. We all have the same influences.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you could give a listener, right, a younger person who's on there like, I want to be a filmmaker, the very start of their journey, what is the number one piece of advice you would give a person back at the start there?
Film. Just do it. Again, audio sucks. So that's why I'm doing this experiment of the no budget movie that I've already filmed some stuff on, and people on Instagram, the guy who's already colored some of the stuff, I shared a couple of the stills. I just had an idea. And so about not being precious, I don't want to write it down. I do enough other writing and stuff. And I try not to produce or edit or think about what production's going to be to stifle myself as a writer. That's kind of impossible when you are the person, when you are the studio as one person. Like, I hate the number of times my name appears in a text. I'm not that one guy. Who's that one guy that's like Tommy Wiseau level? Neil Brennan, or not Neil Brennan. Gosh, I can't think of his name. He's on a level of like director that's like Birdemic. He's like a writer, director, actor, and all this thing.
Fucking Birdemic. There's like 4 of those movies.
But anyway, the guy, David Breen, Neil Breen, or whatever his name is, I'm not getting off on the amount of times I see my name in it. It is 100% necessity. I will pay people, if we can, to do the things that we are unable to do or to take things off my plate. But I don't want to write a script for this thing that I'm shooting now because I don't want to be precious about it. I want to have a general outline in my head and film scenes and go at things with vibe. But the advice is, there is a Splice app. There's a Filmic Pro Legacy app for your phone. You can edit on your phone. You can do sound.
Cheap lav mic plugins, lenses.
So yeah, exactly. Like, you can get lavs. for the you can get Bluetooth labs that are pretty inexpensive off Amazon. Film, like, just do it. Like, don't be talking about like, oh, well, it's exactly what you said. When people are just like, oh, I have the script. Well, really? How much would it cost to make? Oh, probably $10 million. It's like, then you don't have a movie. You have a novel, or you have a manifesto that will never see the light of day.
It always reminds me of guys that are like, I have a dick. Why can't I bang tens? You're like, that's not the math. That's not how it works. That's just not.
Why can't I bang?
I have a dick. She's a 10. What's the problem? And you're like, there's a world of problems, bro.
Those are usually called incels.
Yes.
A comedian friend and I, we host a podcast called Daddy-O. We're going to be going on tour here as a co-headliner because we're both dads and do stand-up. But we were working out bits the other day, and we were saying, like, now as married people, we have these weird hobbies because our partner, we're not having sex. We're not having, so we're finding things to fill up our time. Whereas like back in the day when we were kids, sex, there were so many opportunities or possibilities. It was like going to a cafeteria of food from around the world. You're like, do you want Indian? Do you want Chinese? Do you want Mexican? Except for this is the gross 80s like male stand-up version of the joke, which we wouldn't really say, but you still think about it. It's just like, do we want Mexican? Except for the tacos are like, you're not eating me. Like, what? Just because you have a dick, just because I exist and you are free to have sex with whoever doesn't mean it's ever going to happen.
It's kind of crazy when you put it that way, like how sex was so all-consuming, and when that collapses, you're like, something has to fill the void. I did that once. When I was doing stand-up, I used to do a bit about how once I got married and moved in with my wife, I was like, now it changes how I watch porns, right? And you're just like, oh, those drapes don't match the lamp at all. And I had this whole fucking running bit of things that like bothered me in porn. How you're trying to stay hard, but you're also like, your wife's in there somewhere, just ruining it. But yeah, neither here nor there.
And she's just laying next to you, and you have to put on the subtitles because you need to know what's going on.
This is a story we could talk about. We'll have a beer someday, and I'll tell you the story. I did do that once in protest. Tried to just do it right next to her. Guys, that's my one bit of advice you take from this pod. Don't. It's not a protest that's worth dying over.
Unless your wife is a very heavy sleeper. Look, my friend Eric Hunter and I, we've talked about, we have porn. So not only just search, it's based on how much time do you have, location.
Yeah.
Like, is it just something you're getting done, like exercise?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. It's like doing crunches, which I remember. But
are you lighting candles? Like, how?
So that's my night alone. I used to have the iPad for hardcore, TV for softcore, 2 Yankee candles where the scents would meet in the middle above the I had a whole thing.
Wait, did you say Yankee candles?
It has to be. That was a happy accident that someone pointed out to me years ago. Now it's like my kids might come home, so I do it in my bathroom closet with my feet against the door so they can't open the door and walk in on dad.
Shame and just closet.
It is literally like this. I just lay there covered in it, and I'm like, this is not how my dad lived. This is pathetic. But neither here nor there. Thank you so much for making the time. This was a fucking blast of a conversation. Would you like to tell everyone where they can find you online and the future of Sweetmeats, where they can follow that project as well?
We have our premiere, our world premiere at Esquire Theater in Cincinnati. It has been announced. We're going to be part of Troma is touring a thing called, which I came up with the name for and actually came up with the pitch for it, Hands Across Tromerica, where they're going to tour 6 of their newer films and maybe one classic. I don't know if that is happening still or not. Across the United States through some different independent theaters, and the tour schedule's released already, but the world premiere of the tour and Sweetmeats is in Cincinnati, kicking off the tour on March 22nd. I think tickets, by the time this is out, should be on sale. Lloyd is going to be at a few of the appearances. I'll be at a few of the appearances. He's going to be at the premiere of Sweetmeats. He'll introduce it, and we'll do a Q&A afterwards. Last Lloyd thing, and I've said this on quite a few other things, is Lloyd knows how telephones work. But because he is a carnival barker, when you talk to Lloyd and you have his phone number, which is amazing, like just being in my bedroom. This sounds sexier than, but like I remember being in my bedroom and like my phone started vibrating. I looked at it and I have a picture of Lloyd and it says incoming call Lloyd Kaufman. And he knows that's how cell phones work. He knows it's not like rotary, like, but when you answer a phone call from Lloyd, you'll go, "Hey Lloyd, what's going on?" Or "Hey." Every phone call, he starts by going, "Lloyd Kaufman, president of Troma Entertainment, creator of the Toxic Avenger."
Oh,
and
my
I'm like,
God.
"Yeah, I know, Lloyd. I have caller. I mean, we all have caller ID.
It's 3:20 in the morning, Lloyd. What's going on?"
But it's amazing. Like I for a while was saying that Lloyd was the Stan Lee of D movies, and then I found out that him and Stan Lee were friends.
Makes perfect sense.
So it makes perfect sense.
That's a whole generation that like grew up with like that real ad man thing. I fuck it. See, now I'm just like, God, maybe someday I'll get that call. Yeah, I'm looking right now at Tromerica between March 29th and June 7th. There's a bunch in Ohio, which is close to us, man. Maybe we'll catch you out there. So yeah, guys, go support the Tromerica tour. Go support Ricky. Go support Sweetmeats. Thanks again for your time, man. This has been an absolute blast.
Thank you, guys.